And we are back with part 2 of Shabbat services for November 7th, 2020 and Chest Band 205781. This is Shabbat service and Holy Communion for Waymaker Messianic Jewish and Christian Center, USA. So we are reading the Torah portion now, and we are up to chapter 19. Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is chapter 19 of the book of Genesis. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, while Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. Then he said, "Here, please, my lord, please turn aside to your servant's house. Spend the night and wash your feet. Then you can get up early and go on your way." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the open plaza." But he urged them strongly, so they turned aside to him and they came into his house. He prepared a feast for them and baked matzah, and they ate. And they had not yet lain down when the men of the city, the men of Sodom, surrounded the house from youth to elderly, all the people without exception. And they called out to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have relations with them." But Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brothers, don't act wickedly. Look, I have two daughters who haven't been intimate with a man. Please let me bring them out to you. Do to them whatever is good in your eyes. However, do nothing to these men, since they have come under the protection of my roof. Get out of the way," they said, and they said, "This one came as an outsider and dares to judge. Now we'll treat you worse than them." So they strongly pressed against the man Lot and moved in close to break the door down. The men reached out their hands, brought Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. Then they struck the men at the doorway of the house with blindness from youth to elderly, so that they gave up trying to find the doorway. Then the men said to Lot, "Who else related to you is still here? A son-in-law, your sons and your daughters, whoever else is related to you in this city, bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because their outcry has become so great before Adonai that Adonai has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who were going to marry his daughters. "Get up," he said, "get out of this place, for Adonai is about to destroy the city." But in the eyes of his sons-in-law, he was like a joker. So when morning dawned, the angels rushed Lot, saying, "Get up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or else you will be swept away with this city's iniquity." But he hesitated, so the men grabbed his hand, his wife's hand, and his two daughters' hand, because of Adonai's compassion for him, and they brought him out and left him outside the city. When they brought them outside, one said, "Flee for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stop anywhere in the surrounding area. Escape to the hills, or else you'll be swept away." But Lot said to them, "No, my lord, please, look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have magnified your merciful loyalty, which you have shown me by letting me live. I can't escape to the hill country, for the disaster will overtake me and die. Look, please, this city is close enough to flee there, and it's little. Please let me escape there. Isn't it small? And let me live." So he said to him, "Behold, I will grant your request concerning this matter too, not to demolish the city of which you have spoken. Hurry, flee to safety there, because I cannot do anything until you arrive there." This is why the town is named Zor, and that's Zoar. The moment the sun rose upon the land, Lot entered Zor, and Adonai rained sulfur and fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah from Adonai out of the sky. So he demolished these cities and the whole surrounding area, all the inhabitants of the cities, and the vegetation of the ground. But his wife looked behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. Now Abraham rose early in the morning to the place where he had stood before Adonai, and he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and toward the entire land of the surrounding area, and saw, behold, the smoke of the land ascended like smoke from a furnace. So it was, as God destroyed the cities of the surrounding area, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the upheaval when he demolished the cities where Lot had dwelt. Lot fathers Moab and Ammon. So this is where, and these are later, as you know, by history, Moab and Ammon become enemies to Israel. Then Lot went up from Zoar and dwelled on the mountain, his two daughters with him, because he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. So he lived in a cave, and he and his two daughters. Then the firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man in the land to come to us, as is the custom of the whole land. Come on, let's make our father drink wine, so that we can lie with him and keep the seed from our father alive." So they made their father drink wine that night. The firstborn came and lay down with their father, yet he did not know that she lay down and got up. On the following day, the firstborn said to the younger, "See, I slept with my father last night. Let's make him drink wine tonight as well. Come on, sleep with him, so that we'll keep the seed from our father alive." So they made their father drink wine that night as well, and the younger got up and lay down with him, and he did not know that she lay down and got up. So Lot's two daughters became pregnant by their father. Then the firstborn gave birth to a son named Moab. He is the ancestor of the Moabites to this day. The younger also gave birth to a son and named him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the sons of Ammon to this day. Chapter 20. Sarah renewed. Then Abraham journeyed from there to the land of the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he was dwelling as an outsider in Gerar, Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar sent for her and took Sarah. God came to Abimelech in a dream at night and said to him, "Behold, you are as good as dead because of the woman whom you have taken, since she is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not come near her. So he said, "My lord, will you slay a nation, even though innocent? Didn't he say to me, 'She's my sister,' and she herself even said, 'He's my brother'? I did this with integrity of my heart and guiltlessness of my hands." Then God said to him in a dream, "Yes, I myself knew that you did this with integrity of your heart. So I myself prevented you from sinning against me. That is why I did not allow you to touch her. So now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and let him pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will surely die, you and all who are yours." Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and spoke all these words in their ears, and the men were very frightened. Then Abimelech called to Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? How have I sinned against you that you brought great sin upon me and my kingdom? You've done this. You've done to me things that should not be done." Abimelech also said to Abraham, "What motivated you to do this thing?" Abraham said, "Because I thought there is certainly no fear of God in this place, so they'll kill me because of my wife. And besides, she really is my sister. She's my father's daughter, but not my mother's daughter." Then she became my wife. So when God made me wander away from my father's house, I said to her, "This is your loyalty that you must show me. In every place we go, say of me, 'He is my brother.'" Then Abimelech took sheep, cattle, male slaves, and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham, and returned to his wife Sarah to him. And then Abimelech said, "Look, my land is before you. Dwell wherever it pleases you." At the same time he said to Sarah, "Look, I've given 1,000 shekels to your brother. Look, it is compensation for everything that happened. So to everyone with you, you are vindicated." Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so they could bear children. For Adonai had completely locked up every womb in Abimelech's house because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And chapter 21, the birth of Isaac. Then Adonai visited Sarah just as he had said. And Adonai did for Sarah just as he had spoken. So Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time that God had told him, that Adonai had told him. Abraham named his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore for him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised Isaac, his 8-day-old son, just as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac, his son, was born to him. So Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. She also said, who would have said to Abraham, Sarah has nursed children? For I have given birth to a son in his old age. Ishmael is banished, yet delivered. The child grew and was weaned. Abraham made a big feast on the day Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, making fun. So she said to Abraham, drive out this female slave and her son, for the son of this female slave will not be an heir with my son, with Isaac. Now the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's eyes on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, do not be displeased about the boy and your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her voice, for through Isaac shall your seed be called. Yet I will also make this son of the slave woman into a nation, because he is your seed. So Abraham got up early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. She went and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water from the skin was finished, she abandoned the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat herself down opposite, about a bow shot away. For she had said, I can't bear to see the child dying. So she sat down opposite and lifted up her voice and wept. Then God heard the boy's voice, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. And he said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, because God has heard the boy's voice where he is. Get up, lift the boy up, and hold on to him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the water skin and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew. He dwelled in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. The covenant of Abimelech and Abraham. Now it came about at that same time that Abimelech, with Phicol, the commander of the army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. So now make a pledge to me here by God that you will not violate your word with me, or with my descendants, or with my offspring. As I have shown loyalty to you, show the same to me and to the land in which you have lived as an outsider. Abraham said, I make a pledge. Now Abraham had rebuked Abimelech because of the well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. So Abimelech said, I don't know who did this thing, nor did you tell me, nor did I hear about it until today. Then Abraham took a flock of sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Abraham set 7 young ewe lambs apart from the flock of sheep by themselves. Abimelech said to Abraham, what do these 7 ewe lambs that you've set by themselves mean? He said, you are to accept the 7 ewe lambs from my hand, so that may be a witness for me that I dug this well. This is why that place is named Beersheba, because there both of them made a pledge, and they made a covenant in Beersheba. Then Abimelech got up with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. Then he planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of Adonai, the everlasting God. He lived as an outsider in the land of the Philistines for many days. And that's the end of chapter 21. Chapter 22, the binding of Isaac. Now it was after these things that God tested Abraham. He said to Abraham, Hineni, that's here am I, or here I am. Then he said, take your son, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains about which I will tell you. So Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son. He split wood for the burnt offering and got up and went to the place about which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, sit yourselves down here with the donkey. As for me and the young man, we'll go over there, worship, and return to you. Then Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on Isaac his son. In his hand he took the fire and the knife. So the two of them walked on together. Then Isaac said to Abraham his father, my father? Then he said, here I am, my son. He said, look, here's the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself a lamb for a burnt offering, my son. The two of them walked on together. Then they came to the place about which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there, laid out the wood, bound up Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of Adonai called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, Hineni. And he said, do not reach out your hand against the young man. Do nothing to him at all. For now I know that you are one who fears God. You did not withhold your son, your only son, from me. That is a major, major type and shadow of Yeshua. Because God, Adonai, did not withhold his only begotten son from us. He did not. And he was the ultimate sacrifice to redeem us from our sins. So this is a type and shadow of that. And Isaac is the type and shadow of Yeshua. He willingly laid himself down. And if the angel of Adonai hadn't called out, he could have lost his life. Where, Yeshua did lose his life. He laid his life down on the cross for us. Then Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold, there was a ram just caught in the thick bushes by its horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham named that place Adonai Yira, or Jireh. And it is said today on the mountain, Adonai will provide. So Jehovah Jireh is also another way of saying that is God will provide. The angel of Adonai called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I swear, it is a declaration of Adonai, because you have done this thing, you did not withhold your son, your only son, I will richly bless you and bountifully multiply your seed like the stars of heaven and like the sand that is on the seashore, and your seed will possess the gate of his enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth will be blessed, because you obeyed my voice. Then Abraham returned to his young men, and they got up and went together to Beersheba. Then Abraham dwelled in Beersheba. Now it was after these things that it was told to Abraham, look, Milcah has also borne sons to Nahor, your brother, Uz his firstborn, Buz his brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Yidlaf, and Bethuel. Then Bethuel fathered Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, his concubine, whose name was Rumah, also bore Teba, Gehem, Tahash, and Makkah. And that is the end of the Torah portion for this week. May God bless that holy word. And I'm going to do a recapping of the Torah portion. before we move on to the Haftarah. So we open this week's Parashat VaYera. We talked about the circumcision, and Abraham enjoys a visit from God following the circumcision, his own circumcision, and sees three men in the distance eager to share his hospitality. He actually begs the men to stop a while, have some shelter, have a wonderful meal that he had Sarah prepare, and his one servant prepare the meat, and Sarah prepared the big loaves of bread. And so the three men had news for Abraham. They tell him that in a year, Sarah is going to give birth to a son. And Sarah listened. She was listening to this and she laughed. So God actually confronted Abraham and Sarah over Sarah's reaction, and she denied her lapse in faith. So then the men continue to turn away and head towards Sodom when they were done with their meal and all, and they were going towards Sodom. So during this, Abraham's dwelling in an area that overlooks the Hebron Valley. It's Mamre. It's called Mamre, Mamre. So as we move on to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God decides that Abraham is faithful to him, and he's not going to hide what he is about to do. He is about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he tells Abraham, and Abraham immediately reacts to this when he heard it, and he goes into interceding for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and begs God for mercy. Would he spare the city if there's 50 righteous? And God said he would. And then he kept going down. How about 45? How about 40? How about 30? How about 20? How about just 10? But each time Adonai accepts Abraham's proposal and actually says, even if there's only 10 righteous men, I will not destroy the city. So that kind of tells you the heart of our God as well, that he really doesn't want to destroy, his creation. So from there, the narrative actually shifts, and we witness what unfolds in the city. And the city is very wicked. These two angels come into the city, and the men of the city want to have relations with the men, and Lot refuses to hand them over. He even offered his virgin daughters to the angry mob, and they did not want that. So the two angels actually ended up striking these men with blindness, so they couldn't find the door to come in. Unfortunately, Lot could not convince his future sons-in-laws to follow, and so he has to flee with his wife and two unmarried daughters. And they are told not to look back. However, Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt when the fire and brimstone were raining on Sodom and Gomorrah. So overwhelmed by what they they were experiencing, Lot begged the angels to allow them to rest in a small city, and that was Zor. And they stayed in a cave. And unfortunately, as we also heard that these daughters did wrong, and they actually slept with their father, became pregnant, and from there we actually had Ammon and Moab, because that's the names of the children that they gave birth to. So that is Sodom and Gomorrah. And I'm going to pause it here and come back with part 3, and we are going to pick up the rest of the recapping of the Torah and then proceed with the Haftorah.